I'm being busy. I gotta go. I'm Prime Minister. I know this is the judge's wig. Anyway, hi. This thing is shedding everywhere. So, hello. Can't see anyone watching, but go ahead, ask me questions. I'm going to talk about fucking election shit. This was poorly thought out. This was very poorly. Okay, so if you're going to get props, here's a go. You go. You're going to get props. Don't go to like a fucking party shop. Invest in invest. Do you ever look at yourself, in the mirror and you go, okay, this is my life. Putting on fucking pointless wigs that shed all over and then self-grooming for a minute while you stream. Why aren't your streams more successful, Taya? I don't. Oh, God, Tim Pool's trending. What's he fucking done now? Oh, God. Anyway. Hi, everyone. So, the level of interest in this stream is pretty much approximate to people's general interest in politics and knowledge, but I am going to do a little bit of a rant because you might be aware that I have a degree or two in politics and legal studies and all that sort of stuff. And the first thing that I was told on day one, and this will apply to social media as much as it back then with TV news, which was that basically my lecturer said it's a losing battle. Okay, it's a losing battle. You are part of a very small percentage of people who understand the political system or even have an interest in it. Most people get their news or their election or their understanding, their election news. Most people get their understanding of the political world from sound bites and the daily news. I'm going to sit here fucking preening for the next 3 hours because of that fucking stupid wig. Wasn't swearing either. That worked. Oh, well, I'm not swearing on Twitter. I'm going to swear everywhere else. But it's always stuck with me because there was a part of me that I was like, that's not fair. I've got an old blog post, I think I shared it a while ago, where I said, that's not fair to people. Because, I grew up in a family that, let's say, not savvy in the political department. But they did care. They had opinions on things. Okay, they weren't informed opinions, but there was some degree of closed-mindedness, but if this is one of those things again where sometimes, taking data on face value, the data says some stuff, but sometimes the story underneath the data is more interesting or has a bit more insight. And I think that's why going in and there's this whole fucking debate about data versus lived experience. And the answer is for those both. Both of those things are good if if you're thinking clearly and you're clear-headed about how those two interact, how lived experience and qualitative versus quantitative data, all that sort of stuff, how that stuff all fits in together. They should work in conjunction. Anyone who's doing sort of either or on anything, whether it's disciplines, whether it's research methods, whether it's political parties, whether it's an issue, anyone who's doing sort of zero sum, it's this or that and it's black or white, they're not really thinking clearly. Okay, that's a good sign that someone is probably not thinking in a level-headed way. Okay. Now, obviously I joke about that stuff, but when there's a difference between being on a live stream or being on Twitter and having economy of words. This is where Twitter's gone wrong, really. Which was people are using Twitter for something that is absolutely impossible to have a proper conversation. People, I talked about this yesterday, the never-ending fucking forum bump. That is the trans issue or LGBT stuff or feminism or racism, or they're just never ending forum bumps where eventually it just repeats on itself over and over again. You get new idiots, new grifters, new people who come in and just go, yep, here I am, everybody. I'm saying stuff that everyone else was saying years ago, where it's mostly settled. Anyone who has any kind of, I'm not differentiating myself. Yes, there was a point where I was one of those people who went, what the hell is going on here? Okay, what's going on? All right, okay. But there's another step. There's another step there which people tend to get stuck in, which is progressing forward, moving forward in a charitable fashion to try and find like a solution. And that's where I think that political understanding has to where it kicks in. But also with Twitter, where it's like, even with forums in the old days where you'd have, unlimited paragraphs of text, they would still descend into flame wars. It would still become tedious. It would be the same old shit. Like, I was thinking about this the other day, and I often think about this guy. His name was George, okay? And him and I just did not see eye to eye. George was your sort of traditional American Midwesterner, middle class, bright. Okay, I'm going to say not terribly bright, but he was what you would call a the tedious rebutter. Okay, I'd love to reinitialize. I'd love to get that book, somehow commission that being printed into a book and updated for social media. It's just marvelous. Actually, let me get it up. That's what he said. Into the Flame Warriors. Hang on, I will bring it up. But again, all of this is linked together. Flame Warriors Guide. So this is brilliant. I actually messaged and I actually emailed the guy some years ago because I wanted to purchase this and somehow pay him to get this published into a printed book, but he wasn't keen. It just kind of sat there. And I've sort of I've been thinking about how I could like get this guy crowdfunded or something because it's just so marvelous and it's something I wish I'd done at the time. Just give me one sec. Okay. I'll fiddle for a second while I'm talking because where Twitter went wrong. Well, why Twitter is ineffective for conversation is because instantly you need economy of language. Okay. So even just something like I'm streaming, it's about this YouTube link, hashtag, you're left with now, they extended it obviously to, 280 characters, but before that it was 140. And it was meant to be, it's not fit for purpose. And what I find really interesting about this format is that, is it a chicken and egg problem of those that like in-group, out-group are drawn to simplistic ideas, drawn to in that stuff? Are they using the platform because they have those particular features and they're drawn in that direction? Or has the platform encouraged that kind of behavior or that kind of thinking? And it's like, okay, so what part of this is true? So, like with Instagram, and again, now I'm funny about personality disorders, especially personality disorders from like afar. Like diagnosing people based on internet personas is ridiculous because, like myself, you do personas. Generally speaking, you're not. You're a representation. You're wearing a different mask. There's absolutely nothing of clinical significance or relevance when someone is on a stage or they're performing, and that's what we're all doing on the internet. We're largely performing. Okay. Now, obviously, there's signs when people aren't okay, and again, that's that whole very confused aspects. I'll get into the political side of things as well, but the problem is, the question I ask is, were we always this stupid and angry, or are the platforms making us more stupid and angry? It's one of those chicken and egg questions, and I think a lot of the research is showing that the answer is, like everything else, it depends. Okay, it depends on the person. It depends on their personality. It's quite funny. I hypothesized back in 2009. It annoys me because I've had so many different businesses. I've had different Google Drives, and this is one of those things where my failure to organize my files and lost hard drives and all that stuff over the years means that I've written things, and all I can say is that I wrote them and that I did them, but I haven't got them anymore. And I wish I did, because back in, was it 2009, because I've been on the internet for some time. I've been blogging for some time. I had a popular blog that I promptly turned off when I found out that it was popular. And I've lived through all of the things. I've gone viral. I've been mobbed. All of these things. I've hounded. I've had to get AVOs out over death threats. I've had all of these things happen on a micro scale. Okay, to me, I've lived this life. And so, but I've always been someone who had that sort of clear distinction between person and persona. If you get a business consult with me, or you get something else, or when we're talking business, you'll see a different, more serious side of me. I mean, now I'm a bit more integrated than I used to be. Okay, so I used to have that very clear separation. Use this larger than life, swearing, over the top, ranty blog thing that was cute. Mummy bloggy. It was cute early, and eventually you sort of evolve out of that stuff. Like I was a big fan of Heather Armstrong. She went through the same process. I think, this living your life online and stuff, it does affect your marriage. It affects your relationships with your children. But those things they seem obvious now, but they weren't necessarily obvious when we were going through them. And that, hindsight's 2020, right? This is largely what the book I'm working on is about. But it's like I've lived all of this stuff on a micro scale, and learned along the way. Like we these things seem obvious in hindsight, but they're not obvious. So for me to say in 2009 that I wrote a white paper about this idea of adapting sort of personality types. At the time it was MBTI because it was a bit more simple, and it's a bit more, but obviously Ocean and Hexaco are sort of more, the big five and big six are, sort of more standard these days and have more depth behind them. But, the hypothesis was, the method was somewhat irrelevant in this instance, because the hypothesis was that much like we have different aspects of our personality, like so if you are extremely introverted or extremely shy, that there is some sort of shadow self that emerges in various contexts, right? So when under stress, you may sort of switch. Like one thing that I do, because I'm an INFP, again, ignoring the sort of critiques of MBTI, I'm an INFP, which is sort of a feeler, perceiver. That may surprise you to know that, because obviously I play this sort of ESTJ person online. But I also do that when under stress. Okay, so when I'm under stress, I go super logical, super cold, super practical, like all of these things adapt. But what I started to see this within myself, which was like, I'm playing a version of myself that's not me, that's kind of the qualities or personality traits or an aspect of myself that I wish I had. So I'm projecting an ideal self online that isn't necessarily, who I am. Like obviously now I'm older, those are more integrated. Okay. Again, they were a lot more separate. Like people used to be very surprised at how softly spoken, how sort of socially awkward, wordy, in my own head, all of that sort of stuff I used to be. Now, obviously with, life and experience, and now being in my 40s, don't shut the fuck up. And I'm more like how I would manifest my ideal. I sort of become the person that I want to be, a bit more assertive and, not apologizing for having opinions and all that sort of stuff. Okay. And I've sort of wandered on a tangent, but I had that hypothesis that there's a hardwired internet personality type that is separate from your standard personality type. And what I found amazing was that there's actually studies now coming out saying, yep, there's a shadow personality type. Yep, online you are more like this, and this. You tend to, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. I thought of that in 2009. I wrote it down, but because I wasn't in the school and I wasn't, I was in business, and I was just trying to cobble together. I just didn't have the luxury of studying. I know that people don't understand that studying, while it can be a gateway to improvement and a gateway to, to opportunities, there comes a point where even just studying, right? Studying part-time, studying is somewhat like you've got to be at middle class and over to get there once life kicks in, right? Once you have a kid or once you have a job, like I just never got around to this stuff. And then suddenly you lose a decade and, you're like, oh shit, okay, I should probably get a PhD. And then all the PhDs are like, well, where's your court masters and stuff? And they're like, your masters is too old. And I go, okay, well, thanks for that. I didn't know that. So that's sort of the position that you find yourself in. But, that's a side point. But it's just really interesting because I wonder this chicken and the egg thing with Facebook and Twitter, because I also hypothesize that certain personality types are drawn to certain platforms. Okay, so it's not just a demographic thing, it's a psychographic thing where, if you prefer sort of long form, okay, if you're, or more prone to sort of long form rants or, that sort of stuff, you might be inclined to go more with Facebook, or if you're more of a connector or that sort of thing. Okay, but with Twitter, it used to be sort of like the weird kids were on Twitter. We were just having fun, and it was 140 characters or less. It was understood. Now, where Twitter went wrong is that people, again, like I said, people had this idea that political conversations were even possible on Twitter, which they are not. And that comes back to the economy of language and outrageous stuff. But it also comes back to that first thing that I was taught day one, year one of undergrad in political science, okay? That you are part of the 3 to 5% of people who understand how different levels of government work, how the courts work, that you understand any policy in any detail, how political systems work. That's a small percentage of people know that. And the vast majority of people get their information and political education and all of that stuff from a class in year 9 that they paid attention to as little as possible, okay, and sound bites on the news. Okay, so obviously this was 1998, so it was the news. But I think this applies as much to Twitter as it does to anything else. But that, again, which problem begets which problem, which is that when you think about it in terms of psychology, you go, okay, so, all right, so certain people are drawn to a certain experience and certain platform. We know that's true. Okay, so certain personality types, certain profiles like certain features more than others. Okay, obviously Instagram, people who are more on that sort of feeling creative side prefer Instagram. That's normal. People who are sort of on that more accountant engineers. Now, these aren't absolutes, they're just trends. LinkedIn is a personality type on its own. Like there's certain things. For someone like me to turn around and do YouTube is just pretty crazy. That's actually way out of my comfort zone and not true to type. True to type for me would be writing, LinkedIn, Facebook. That's sort of more my jam. So doing this was overcoming something that made me very uncomfortable. But most people are consuming bullshit, dare I say it. But it just keeps sticking with me, and it's why I consider election campaigns to be somewhat uninteresting for a start. Okay, the reason why I know because I know that basically every single day the goal is to get the soundbite. Okay. But also most of, 130, I think, on average of our 150 seats. So in Australia, the government is determined by the lower house, the House of Representatives. The leader in the lower house of the major political party forms government as the Prime Minister. Okay, we have 2 major political parties. I'm going to call, okay, so it's confusing for people, but it's Australian Labor Party, who technically have the largest representation, right, the largest group number in Parliament. But you also have a coalition, which is the Liberal Party and the National Party. So they are distinct from each other. They are the Liberal Party and the National Party, but they form the coalition, who are now sort of grouped into a party. A little bit confusing, but there's a convention there where the Prime Minister is the Liberal Party, and that the Deputy Prime Minister will be the leader of the National Party. Okay, so it's a bit weird and yeah, but just for simple sake, we'll just say there's two parties. But we do have a multi-party system in the upper house, okay? Now, we do have a couple of independents occasionally, and a couple of Greens, a couple of independents sometimes win lower house seats, but I'm just going to talk about sort of on average, okay? 130 of our 150 lower house seats are largely settled. They're called safe seats, okay? And how that works, so I think people are confused how sort of election night works, which is that when they call the election for a number of seats, it doesn't necessarily mean that the counting is finished, okay? What it means is that because people go, oh yeah, I saw this, had this one, okay. Part of the reason why I don't engage in an election campaign is because everyone loses their fucking minds and they don't know what they're talking about, and all they do is say, there's no information available. I don't know this. What's the I don't know what. Oh man, there's nobody to vote for. Oh my God, they're all fuckheads. It's like people just say all these dumb things. It's like, no, there's plenty of people to vote for if you know how to vote. There's plenty of, options if you can't get to the polling booth. You're not running out of time by doing a postal vote because they still count them. Election night is not the deadline. Election night is when, sort of they go with they call the settled stuff. So basically the way that we do it is based on trends, okay? So you've got, we've got what happens is with a safe seat, so these are called safe seats, they're going to go one way or the other, okay? It's really only 20 seats that are really in dispute. Sometimes you have some surprises and anomalies and all that sort of stuff. That's what it means when it goes maverick, right? And but you've got this sort of, the two candidate preferred system. So we've got a preferential system. In America, that's called ranked choice voting, okay? There's lots of different words for it. Preferential voting, ranked choice, okay, that's what it is. So what happens when on election night at 6 p.m. when the polls close, okay? Most of those seats go a certain way, okay? Most of them are fairly predictable. They are uncontested. Usually it is one candidate from Labor, one candidate from Liberal, one is likely to win, one is likely to come second, and sometimes they go, oh, it's different. Sometimes there's a surprise. So what they do is they do a first round count, okay? So all of the votes, they tally all of the votes for every candidate who stood in that seat. And if one candidate has 50% of the vote on the first round, it's considered gone. It's considered settled, okay? The vast majority of seats in Australia, okay, they usually, they mostly, okay, go from first, I can't remember the stats. I'm wandering off lane, but the stats are around, which is that, but it is the vast majority of lower house seats in Australia are already pretty much, decided before the election, but not in a way that they've decided. It's just that's how people vote. They're not changing their vote, okay? Unless there's a big landslide. So what with tribalism and polarism, we're starting to see a lot more major swings in either direction, and it's exciting and interesting, but this, again, I'm talking about historical stuff. But they know that this liberal national candidate is likely to win because they've got a large majority. So they knock out. Okay, let me get my iPad up. That might be easier. Okay, so where are we? Let's get it up, shall we? So, hang on. Let me draw. Got this. So, I know this is not very interesting, but you might be interested. You never know. Okay. So what we've got is candidate one. Oops. I fucked up. I'm not going to fuck around with. Okay, that's working now. There we go. Okay. So I hit the highlighter button, so I was confused. So you've got candidate 1, okay? You've got 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, on your ballot. Right, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What you do is, if you know ranked choice voting, you don't vote for one candidate. You rank them up. So you might vote 1 for that candidate. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. Okay, preferences. You know about preference. So what happens is you've got candidate number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say there's 5. Okay. Now, I know that there's this is a very easy. It's very. I'm not going to go into too much like stuff, but this is just the basics. So if candidate 1, so usually you've got. So let's just make these as this is not the voting thing. This is how many votes. So candidate number 1, let's say they've got if they get 50% of the vote, at the first count when they tally up all of the ballots at 50% of the vote. Candidate 1, they may have, let's say it usually goes what? Let's go 42. Or actually, yeah, hang on. Dickhead. Come here. 42, give or take, 5%. What's the rest? 2, 1. Okay, I think that's right, is it? Yeah. So 1%, 2%, right? So candidate number 1 has, so the bottom candidate has 1% of the vote. The fourth, most popular candidate has 2% of the vote, third most, and so on and so forth. Now, in this situation, there's a first round of voting, okay? That's got to be +1. Okay, it's got to be over 50%. That candidate wins, okay? They don't go any further. So this is the thing that people get confused by, which is that they don't tally up all of the vote and all of the preferences all of the time for everything, especially not on election night. They do it to be so that's not how it works. So if they get a 50, I'm going to adjust these numbers actually because it's annoying the shit out of me. Let's make this because it needs to be. So let's say okay. I don't know if that adds up, but you get my drift. So they need to have at that first round 51. They've already won. That candidate has already won. That's a relatively safe seat. That's settled, okay? Because with preferences, all that stuff, they're going to win. They don't need to go any further, so they call that seat, okay? Now, so that's round 1. That's what happens when they go, that's decided, that's decided, that's decided, that's decided, okay? They know how it's going to go, all right? Now, it's probably more like 56%, whatever is, it needs to be a large majority. In that instance, it's probably being a little bit what am I saying? Whatever, those things. So let's say this one is actually, yeah. So let's say this one's 49, 49. That doesn't work. Hang on. Let's say, hang on. I should have prepared more with the numbers. I'm just hang on. So let's go 40. Let's say 45. 44. I bet. Can you tell? So 8% greens. Okay. So 45. What is that? 8. So that's what? 52 plus 45. Have I gone over? Let's just go 3-1. I'm fucking terrible at this stuff. Let's just pretend that this adds up. I think it does. Maybe. Anyway, it doesn't. Whatever. Moving on. Don't fuck around. So in this instance, okay, so there isn't a decisive person over 50%. So what they do then is candidate number 5, okay, not this one, but candidate number 5 gets wiped out of the race, okay. And they're whatever their percentage was. Give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure that this adds up. It's actually going to bug me otherwise. Hang on, calculator. Where are we? Calculator. I can't do maths like when I'm streaming. There's too many things going on. 45. I know it's simple arithmetic, but it's just my brain's not working. Too many things going at once. Oh, okay. Hang on. That's what I did wrong. Okay. So, so they had 1%, right? There. They get wiped out, but that 1%, right? That then gets reallocated to in here. So their second preference, okay, on that last person's ballot gets removed. Okay. So then that gets into the pool. So then they make it up, obviously to 100%. So this may nudge this to say, let's say, look. So the second preferences, which you have control over, it's not something that is just allocated, and that's another misconception, right? So that may make it like, oh, let's go 45.25. This one may have had a preference deal, so this one might be more like 45.5. Okay, so half of the people who voted for this number 5 candidate put this candidate as their number 2. So then you've got 0.25 just to make it simple, and 0.25. Okay, so their 1% gets reallocated to the rest of the candidates. Okay, then what happens? Okay, still don't have a majority. Okay, still don't have 50%. So what happens? Fucking would you erase? So what happens? This one gets pulled out. Okay, so then that gets reallocated up into the next few candidates. Okay, so then that may inch that up to say 46. Actually, and this person may have more. Actually, let's do something interesting. What this would be, right? 45.25. But let's say this fourth candidate here, okay, they, their second, a large portion of the second preferences went here. Okay, so this bumps this person up to 10. Okay, they hit 10%. I don't know what the fuck's going on with this shit. And then this person was, bumped up to. So they keep trying to see how it goes from bottom to top. It's not like it's the way that it gets knocked out. So you've got, let's make it round numbers again because it's fucking retarded. So I understand process, and it's just anyway. So, so this one might actually be may hit the lead and may actually go 47. Oh, sorry, can't do that. Hang on. So this one may actually go, so that may stay at 45 point, was it? It was 45.25. Actually, let's make it 46 just to fucking, so that gets knocked out to 46. I think I'm really good at explaining things, but I'm just trying to show you the process. So it's a bit, it's complicated, but it's really fucking interesting. Because people seem to think that it works in the opposite direction, but it actually works from the bottom upwards, okay? And this is why those micro parties, making sure you know what their kind of preference deals and what they are, is really important, because it actually sort of goes, they're the first people who can actually nudge in a 49.5 to 49.5 situation where these guys all have 2% of the vote. You'll find that those people at the bottom of the ballot are actually quite substantial in the way that they can influence things. But again, it's, whatever. So 46, 10, doesn't work, does it? 50, 44, is it? I can't fucking do this. Okay, 44. I'm good at certain things. Math's not good. My numbers, like in real time, not good. It takes me a bit longer. I think I've got some sort of like dysgraphia or something. It takes a sort of second pass to work with numbers. So, so you got the 46%. Okay, you're 44%. Now, this is where things get interesting, because you're now at let's say this, again, we're making things up because they would get fractions of a percentage. I'm trying to fucking make it easy, right, for myself. So when you get here, so what you'll see in this scenario is that you may actually find that, because this is where the Greens, okay, or some are sort of independent, okay. So let's say you've got a Liberal LNP here, so the Liberal National Party, and then you've got the ALP here, okay, and you've got that, okay. Oh shit, I've been going too high. Oh well, okay, whatever. Sorry, let's start over quickly. So you get to a position where you've knocked out all the bottom candidates, okay, and then what happens is you've got, so you've got number one. Yeah, they're at sort of, let's say they're sitting at 46. So you still don't have it at 50% at this point. Okay. Let's make it simple, 10%. Now, this is where something like a green, okay, let's just make this a bit smaller. So you'd have like a green or an independent, or even like this is what happened with One Nation like years ago, right? You might have, let's say it's the Liberal National Party here and the ALP, right? So this is what happens. This is why when people say they'll get preferences, right? Eventually, these second preferences keep being rolled from the bottom candidates into some sort of, top three. You still don't have that 50%. Now, what we know about Green voters is that they will usually preference Labor second. So can't remember what the percentage was. It depends. It's seat to seat. It's obvious. It's strategic, and also it depends on the voters. Like some people might be like, okay, I'm voting Green, but like I hate the Labor Party, which is unusual, but it happens, right? And independents might be more inclined to like recommend that people vote, for the Liberal second or whatever. So that's why when Pauline Hanson said that she was preferencing Labor in certain key seats, this is what she meant was that this became significant. Now, One Nation's vote is obviously not as significant as it used to be. That used to be a little more, but it can come down to that in a marginal seat, right? So hang on. So you've got independent. Now, what happens here? So let's say 80%, okay, of these people here, okay, preference Labor second. So that plus that. So that would be, so they get 48 and they go to 52. Okay. Again, that's, hang on. Right. So sometimes what will happen is that's where it becomes really interesting is that 10% chunk of protest votes becomes a thing. So I know I haven't really explained it very well because I wasn't really intending to go into the details. Okay. So let's go ALP. So, and then you got 3. Let's go Green. Okay. They have 46. So they were always in the lead the whole time, okay? ALP were 44, Greens were 10. Okay, so that got rolled, okay? Because the people who vote for minor parties tend to not preference the major parties before they've sort of exhausted all of the minor party preferences. Even on the right, they do. They often don't vote Green because they're often in conflict. But again, there's lots of things that move here. But this is a common scenario, okay? Which is that the Greens might get, say, 10%, that rolled into a 10%, but they're usually number 3. 80% of those Green voters would probably vote Labor. So that's 8%. Okay. Knock them out. Okay. Knock them out. Allocate the preferences. The ALP then win 52% to, what is it? 48%. That's roughly how this works. Okay. Now, I know I haven't explained it well and I'm writing on my face. So anyway, I need a better system. I should move over here. I should be writing here instead. I keep forgetting. So anyway, but that's roughly how it works. And I know I haven't explained it really very well, but this is stuff that this is basic stuff that people don't know. First of all, let me turn the iPad thing off. Let me just turn it off, sorry. Blah, blah, blah. Come on. Here we go. So, people don't know that sort of basic stuff, like how do your preferences work? And then people go, I don't fucking like any of that. So, well, no, you can do stuff because you can actually control those numbers on the ballot, okay? Now, this is, the misconception around the counting, which is that your vote doesn't count. It does. It just works in a certain way where if it's absolutely decisive, it won't be called on election night. It's still counted. It's still counted initially. It's just that your preferences will not necessarily be considered until it becomes it goes into sort of into the death spiral of preferences, right? And it's that's, again, people just don't understand how this stuff works. You can't use all of the resources. So anyway, the Senate works differently because that's a proportional voting system, okay, similar to the United States, where based on this, each state has its own allocated number of senators. It's a fixed amount, and that's just based on the percentage of the vote. Works very similarly, but those quotas still work with a preferential system. In case you're confused, we won't go there, okay? So the same thing works, but there's 6 seats, and so they still knock out the bottom, every time. Now, this is where those preference stacking deals become a thing, but we won't go into that detail. But this is basic shit about how votes work. And so this is why I get annoyed with campaigns, because I know that most people don't know this stuff. I know people don't even give a shit about this stuff. And then they're like, but even still, right? I also am not really people who fixate on voting below the line. It's like, well, actually, no, because I've been part of these discussions over the years when I used to work on campaigns. Funnily enough, I used to be good at the numbers strategy and preferences, right? I can explain the system. I'm just not good at adding up. But, which is like this insistence. It's like, well, actually, if you support a certain party, they have made a recommendation, okay? Their preferences will flow in a way that most benefits them strategically in the electorate, okay? And so if you want them to win, sorry, my face has fallen off. If you want them to win, then, there's nothing wrong with numbering one above the line. There's I've noticed this sort of micromanaging thing. It's like, I've noticed that some people use it like like some sort of virtue, like, well, what a shock that people virtue signal with this as well. And they insist on voting below the line because, somehow they think that they can prove that they're like more knowledgeable or, but it's not necessarily the case, because I know how behind the scenes those preferences have been negotiated back and forth to the benefit of your favorite party. So if you are in support of it, like wanting the Greens to get elected, for example, in the upper house, then they've maximized their preference deals according to that strategy. So to number below the line is actually to somewhat undermine the efforts. Again, that's only if you support a certain party, right? That's why I believe it or not, tend to just vote one and one. Like I do my preferential voting. I tend to vote along those recommended lines for the party that I would like, the candidate that I would like to see win, because I know that they've done the work behind the scenes. And so even if you want to know, like with the I didn't do much with the Greens, but I had some exposure to the conversations, which I found very interesting, which was that these things were hotly debated, okay, especially like the One Nation card and the and One Nation and the Liberal National Party preferencing them in certain seats. It was actually really interesting when Andrew Forrest had his sort of split off from the Liberal Party in WA, and he set up Liberals for Forests, okay, so he's always been very much into sort of environmental stuff, and you'll see him sort of doing that now. But when Liberals for Forests were a thing, the WA Greens often would preference Liberals for Forest, but that would be something that was hotly debated, hotly contested, highly controversial, because again, the nature of people who are in political parties, especially the Greens, they tend to be, let perfect be the enemy of enough or good or of strategic value. They kind of die in a ditch over over things where this is, again, I've talked about the problem with activism versus political organising and being in Parliament as a representative in a party. This is a tension the Greens have always had, the ALP to an extent as well, which is that it's not just about the professional class, but it's actually about what works strategically and politically. Is sometimes at odds with activism, like the feminists going around going, "What's a woman?" I don't know how that could ask that. All that does in 2022, maybe 2017, okay, but in 2022, all it is just bad faith and bullshit, and just trying to trip someone up and trying to make someone uncomfortable, and with an obvious understanding of what you're trying to accomplish and do, which is to you can't claim that people are being harassed, cancelled, mobbed, losing their stuff, all of this stuff, and then demand that someone capitulate to your question of what is a woman during an election campaign without knowing what the consequences of them engaging you are. So knock it off with Jane Carrow. Seriously, knock it off. Okay? Stop harassing prominent feminists into saying what a woman is, because you're also moaning about what the consequences are. You can't have it both ways, Okay, you can't play victim. You can't talk about being cancelled. You can't talk about being harassed. You know, when someone has book deals, they've got, you know, bigger causes. They've done a lot of work for women over the years, and you're trying to trip them up over this question that could lose them all of that. Okay, knock it off. It's like that. Again, that's a really good example of how activists aren't necessarily politically savvy. Okay, again, lawyers are not necessarily politically savvy. Lawyers are good at procedural stuff. Like, I've had enough exposure to sort of understand. I tend to be more political. Okay, I like the law. I love the law, but like, law's too much fucking admin for me. I like when I like the strategy, persuasion, and you'd think that I'd love election campaigns, but I actually don't. And this is why I sort of disengage from the election most of the time, because I know what they're doing. I know what the trick is. I go, oh yeah, like basically I watch the Gruen Nation and I go, yep. And they're like bad takes and lame and like all that stuff. I get bored with election campaigns, okay? Because everyone's got a fucking opinion. And everyone I was actually laughing about this because, and my husband, when I first met him, okay, he was like, oh, just like donkey vote. And I was like, what the fuck? What? Why you do what? That is such a white male thing to do. How dare you? My sisters fought for that, right? And there's many people in this country who need a vote and don't get one. So what I do is, here's what you do. If you don't know who to vote for the people who can't vote as if, they were voting for a representative that they needed. Vote as if those who can't vote could get a voice or some representation. I think that might change things a little bit if people moved away from what's in it for me. Oh, well, they said I could release my superannuation to buy a house. Cool. My super's empty because I needed to withdraw it for life-saving surgery already. So good luck in Howard's Australia. Okay. So, but, all of this sort of bullshit. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, if, he might help me buy a house and my stuff. And I want this. It's like, well, no, how about you vote according to the kind of country that you would like to see? We've got a pretty good sample of history. Again, I don't know who to vote for. Paul goes, oh, yeah, I was talking about Paul. We had this conversation. My jaw dropped to the floor because I was like, how am I married? How am I with you? How is this? This is a blocker. This is a deal breaker. He's since changed his tune and become a little more savvy. But he goes, there's no one place where I can just go and find out who to vote for or how to vote. I went, yes, there is. He's like, no, like media. I said, yeah, it's called our national broadcast, the ABC. Oh, no, but they don't have the information. I said, well, the Australian Electoral Commission has it. Yeah. Oh, no, but also, like, they don't. It's like, no, you haven't looked for it. And it's like, holy shit, we live in a time, and this comes back to Twitter and political conversations, where we live in a time where you actually do have access to information. It's just not fucking drip fed into your veins. Okay? You can't just sit there and go, this is the problem of like what social media has done to like this idea of a frictionless experience, which is that everything has to be fucking frictionless and easy when this stuff is quite complicated. Okay? I really fucked up explaining it because, and it's like, but this is the fundamental aspect of civic engagement. And I have a feeling that most people don't know how this works. And I think that you shouldn't have an opinion until you do. Oh, there's no one I can vote for. Yes, there is. There's plenty. Okay? There's lots of very hardworking people in all political parties. Okay? Even One Nation, the Greens, the ALP, the LNP, independents. Okay? The shooters and fishers. I don't agree, and I think they're reactionary, but that's what we do best, is making sure that there's plenty of people to fucking vote for. That's how our system works, is that you end up with plenty of people to fucking vote for. Okay? You just got to listen and engage and learn for 2 fucking seconds. and stop being a moron. Oh, I don't know where the information is. Okay, if only there was a website. Yeah, it's called our national broadcaster. But he won't mind me roasting him. He's gotten better. And I was like, excuse me, if you don't know who to vote for, then maybe put yourself in the shoes of fucking someone who's in a detention centre and vote like they would vote. Or stop your whinging, you privileged fucking goon. He still asked me to marry him after all that, by the way. Yeah, I'm awesome. All right. Hang on, let me do it. I've just been fucking trying to screen share this thing. Hang on a sec. Let me just drag this window in a direction that you can't see. Hurrah. Because I wasn't planning. I didn't set up screen share. Because this is my work computer as well. So it's like, all the things. So I don't have a dedicated streaming computer anymore because it fucking shat the bed. So hang on, give me 1 sec. Let me just move this over. This is hilarious. It's worth it. I know it's a lot. It's fucking, who gives a shit? No one watches anyway. Watch it, don't watch it. So I was looking at news.com.au and I laughed and laughed and laughed because, look, hang on. Because, people get most of their news from like Murdoch and all that, the Murdoch rags and all that shit. So, where are we? Oh, shit. Atlassian's stock plunged 60%. Oh, okay. I'm getting distracted. Okay. Hang on 1 sec. Whoa, 60%. So this made me laugh. Okay. I'm sharing. Hang on 1 second. Hang on. I have to adjust them. Sorry about this. So, it was impromptu. Hang on 1 sec. Went responsive. I don't like that look. Hang on. It's going to be jammed in. Sorry, I didn't set up the scene. Okay, it's going to be jammed in, but we'll get there. So, look at this. I looked at, and I was like, if only there was somewhere to... hang on. Where the fuck is it now? Where'd it go? Here we go. All right. Hang on. Oh, this fucking thing's stupid. All right, screen share. So, look. So, if I was like, yeah, our national broadcaster, AEC, every media outlet, also this. I just laughed at this section. I was like, where you can vote early this week. A map. Because everyone's moaning that like they can't vote early. It's like, yeah, where you can vote early. Where to vote on election day. Confused? Here's a simple guide. Unsure how to vote? Here's a cheat sheet. Find out who your local candidates are. News.com.au. Murdoch rag. Okay? Right available. Right where you want to see it. I just had a fucking laugh at that. Anyway, let's go back to the Flame Warriors because this is the thing I was talking about before. So, hang on. Let me move you on. This website, right? Amazing. So we go to the beginning, and he did these like profiles of people on the internet. Right? So, Big Dog is a bully who doesn't hesitate to use his superior strength to intimidate other combatants. Big Dog may be small, articulate, or just plain mean, but in any case, he's a remorseless fighter, brutally ripping into even the weakest of combatants. Once Big Dog, we've all encountered these people, right? Me too will join the attack. So he's got all these others, right? So you've got all these like basically like profiles, personas. So you've got, where is it? The archivist makes me laugh. Let's look at the archivist. Saves and squirrels away each and every discussion forum message. Do you remember having a bad day back in 1996 when one of your messages you may have said a few things that were perhaps a little hasty? Don't worry, archivist still has it and will post it to the forum. None of this is new. Post it to the forum if you begin to get the upper hand in battle. Archivist can be a very effective and fearsome warrior. What have I got in my hair? And then this is great. I'll put a link actually in it. Where are we? Is it Capitalista? What was that one? Oh, Capitalista is not always a wealthy fat cat. Being a Capitalista is a state of mind rather than a reflection of affluence. A strident and extraordinarily self-satisfied warrior, Capitalista takes every opportunity to extol the superiority of the free enterprise system and has a powerful aversion to the welfare states of Europe. This was done in the 90s, right? This website. It's fucking great. Where are we? Was it the tireless? Oh, this guy. So this was the guy I was talking about on the forum. And so I encountered this guy. It's called the tireless rebutter. For tireless rebutter, there is no such thing as his picture went away, as a trivial dispute. He regards all challengers as barbarians at the gates. His unflagging tenacity in making his points numbs and eventually wears down. His unflagging tenacity in making his points numbs and eventually wears down the opposition. He's confident that his arguments are sound. Tireless rebutter can't understand why his universe closed. Most of them hang out on Ozpol. Where have we got? What was the other one? Anyway, there's therapist. It was funny as well. Therapist can be a highly annoying and therefore very effective warrior. Instead of making a frontal attack, therapist attempts to shift the focus of the conflict to the combatant's psychological motivations and problems. He will freely speculate about other warriors' insecurities, personalities, and relationships, but he will almost never directly engage the subject of the dispute. Caution, evil clown, imposter, and troller often masquerade as therapists. Like, this stuff's great, mate. I know I went on a fucking diversion, but whatever. Evil clown is very quick with a joke, but his jests always have a barb. He has little patience for in-depth discussions and will often disrupt exchanges between serious forum participants by introducing irrelevant topics, fatuous quips, and offhand comments. His greatest thrill is to taunt and humiliate weaker or more plodding warriors with his snappy ripostes. Not a particularly powerful warrior, Evil Clown will attempt to avoid defeat by accusing his attacker of having no sense of humour. It's fucking funny. Anyway, I digressed, but I just wanted to. I'll set that thing. But this stuff isn't new. But people, again, there's that whole thing where it's like, are certain people drawn to certain platforms? So with Twitter, are the dumbest, laziest thinkers drawn to Twitter, or did Twitter just create? I think it's more the former than the latter. I don't think Twitter's necessarily making people dumb. I don't know. It's interesting. So anyway, in that lecture, that first lecture, I was sitting there and I was like, that doesn't feel right. It feels like if you take the time, okay, to talk to people and explain and meet them where they're at, that they still don't fully understand, but they're not ignorant. They're not completely apathetic. They're not completely ignorant. And I had this idealistic view about Twitter early on because I saw people engaging. This was before it all got weaponized. I saw people being more curious about politics where they wouldn't ordinarily. Like when, and ordinary people who would have been written off as apathetic or ignorant or dumb or whatever, showing an interest. Now, the problem is that that's obviously been weaponized, and now people are being fucking stupid all the time, and they're encouraged to be stupid because the business model incentivizes them to share outrageous, dumb shit. Also, some people just share ignorant, dumb rants, and that's, a big part of misinformation is just sharing bullshit without thinking, right? That's the main problem. But I still know that people get most of their news, most of their information, not from, it was interesting actually. Gruen Nation said that people still get their electoral information from the news. I don't think they do, from the nightly news. Older generation maybe, but people don't watch the news. No one watches the fucking news. They get it from social media. They get it from Twitter. They get it from, not just from Twitter, but what's trending on Twitter. Okay. And that's where it becomes, people just don't know, I don't know why it's such a blind spot here that the US culture wars are having such a huge impact on Australian politics. And that's why election night will be interesting to see if there's any of these maverick seats where they suddenly flip. I live in a seat that is predominantly liberal, conservative, right? But the demographics have shifted since the last election, and also culture wars, and also I think a lot of the anger around housing prices, and this stuff isn't just affecting lower incomes and working class, like low, what you would think of as working class anymore. It's actually affecting middle class. It's affecting doctors. It's affecting those on high incomes. And so obviously they care that, it's more, again, it's not on purpose. It's just that, issues become more urgent when they affect you. And I think that people are really fed up with the cost of living going up. Like people who are on comfortable incomes, like we were on fairly comfortable income, but now it's like down the wire because of the cost of rent and having to move every year. So you get stuck in this. So what the thing is that the policy problem is actually tenants' rights. Okay, the ability for landlords. So in Europe or some places in America, and generally speaking, long-term leases are more common. Whereas here, all of there's not a lot of tenants' rights that are enshrined. A lot of it is geared towards landlords having more power. They can just decide to put the rent up arbitrarily. They can decide to not renew your lease. So what's happened with us is we're pretty good financially. We've always been, we're pretty financially stable in terms of, but it doesn't go anywhere anymore. The money, it's just evaporates because the cost of rent has gone up by, like, in our case, 50% over what it was before. Okay. So we were paying for a massive house. When we had the business, we paid because we were working, living at home, had an office, had staff, and had clients come visit and stuff. We invested in sort of, renting a larger home. And I know over East people will laugh at this, but we were, 5 years ago paying $780 a week, but it was a massive 5x2. It was on the hills that overlooked the city, right? It had a built office. It had a dedicated, all of the great things, right? It was fancy. We then decided when I got sick and with pancreatitis and I was just, reevaluating everything, we decided to downgrade and move to a cheaper suburb. We were paying $430 a week. Okay. We were going, okay, well, we'll put the difference into a mortgage, saving for a deposit. We started to save some money, started to get a deposit together. Okay. And because I'm self-employed and Paul hadn't been at his employer for, 2 years and all that sort of stuff, and I'd been sick, obviously we'd have to have a higher deposit in order to buy. So we were doing all the right things. We're doing all the things that, like, everyone goes, well, you should have less avocado toast. Okay, well, we didn't then. We did all of the things. Okay, we're going to focus on trying to save this deposit. Now, a year later, landlord goes, we're not renewing the lease because we want to sell it because the market went up. Okay, they wanted to sell it or come back to it. Who knows? I don't know what the situation was with that house, but there was no recourse for us. We had to use all of that money that we had saved on movers, bond, all that stuff. Also, rents went up. So that was at the peak of the pandemic when, so then we now back up to $700 a week for a shitter house than the one that we were living in for $430. And now we're moving to a slightly nicer one because the market's leveled out around the corner. And, that's $690, but it doesn't have solar. It's got, like, the heating is like whatever. And, so it's really crazy, like, how this, like, market has gone up 30%. But people are noticing this stuff. Utilities like through the roof. Like, we thankfully have solar here, but at this new house, like, we've got home office with a lot of electricity. I'm going to fucking lot. We use a lot of electricity because we're, family of, like, tech people, and we've got every room, whatever. We just use a lot of power, and we work here, and the tax deductions are marginal compared to what you actually have to spend to maintain a home office and all the things that go with that. But heating, all that stuff. I mean, there's a wood fire, but wood is expensive. Everything has gone up. And I actually laugh because we have to hire, like, we're hiring a vacate cleaner and a gardener and stuff just because, we're both not physically very well at the moment. I was looking, and the gardeners are charging $65 an hour. And I fucking went, what the fuck? Okay. Well, they're earning almost, and people are, because, I have consulting rates, but there's also the mates rates, which I go, my margin break-even point is $80 an hour. And I'm like, that's got to go up because gardener is getting $65 an hour. I could just go, like, it's like, okay, well, I haven't put my rates up in, like, 5 years, so I'm going to do that. But, everyone can put their rates up, but I'm not allowed, and everyone balks at mine. It's like, no, because I have overheads and stuff like that. I'd rather, anyway. Fucking hell. Everyone else is getting their rates put up, but not me. And unfortunately, because I tend to ramble and go off point about our housing situation on a stream. Well, it is political, but this is. I think this is where the mood is. Okay, so I live in a place right next to the main tertiary hospital. A lot of doctors, a lot of people, and right next to one of the major universities as well. So there's I'm seeing it. The sentiment has shifted. Okay, doctors, lawyers, people who would traditionally somehow rationalise voting for the Liberal Party are now questioning that. And again, I'll emphasise Liberal Party as conservatives here. Labor is our left-wing party. Okay. Not like the Democrats. Democrats have less diversity of thought. ALP has very distinct left-wing, sort of, centre-left, sort of more right-wing, components to it. It's a little more diverse. So, and even the Liberal Party, they're also quite diverse. Our political parties are quite diverse in the way that they operate. US one seems to be all about, but I don't know forgot what my point was. Forgot what my point was. Let me think for a sec. Well, oh yeah. Okay, so why I lose interest in elections is because it's like if you see it over and over, it's like predictable. Okay, we knew that the ALP would be on the back foot with the media. It's gone exactly the way we thought. We knew that they'd go like nasty with the like culture wars stuff and the trans angle, and I'm sure Kath will secure herself a very nice little advisor role if she doesn't win, for taking one for the team. I'm sure that she will be rewarded for her efforts and loyalty. Okay, and I'm sure that was part of the conversation. They're quite cynical operators, and that faction of the Liberal Party are very, very cynical operators. But a lot of this stuff is just sort of plays out, and it's like, well, people aren't interested. Like, I was going to do like election information and coverage and stuff, and people don't know it. They don't watch it. No one cares. All they do is just, they don't consume any facts. Okay. When you present facts, you're the bad guy. Okay. When you try to go, no, I'm going to give you my time and because this was my hypothesis when I said, you know what, based on what I've seen, if you invest enough time in people, they can come around, and and Paul has proven that, right? That, by badgering him. But I'm saying, if you invest the time and take the time to explain things and all that stuff, that people can come around. But the problem is, no one values the effort that takes. Like, no one will invest in educational anything. I mean, not that I explained it very well, but this is a live stream, not a fucking pre-written, pre-prepared thing. But this is my frustration, which is I sit there and I look at the campaign and I go, what's the point? They're not listening. You're just vying. It's basically the same stuff, like vying for like going viral. Okay, it's the same fucking mentality, trying to get your soundbite, trying to get your hot take, trying to catch the opposition at like doing something stupid and embarrassing them. And like all this talk about policy, like the Labor launch was fantastic. Nobody fucking watched it. 450 people were watching this live stream. Okay, across, it might have been a few thousand across the board. No one was watching it. They were great. They were talking about really good policy, solid policy. But they're sitting there going, what's a woman, to Jane Caro on Twitter, and manufacturing a fucking and campaigning for the Conservatives. And it's like, well, what's the point? What's the point of explaining how it works? There is no point. And I realised I'm sitting there going, this has cost me $60,000 for nobody to listen. I had this with my grandma. I had an altercation with her, like last time because I was basically like, well, I'm not going to bother. I might, do I want to continue I was in a despondent mood when I met her. And she also has, when I saw her, she also has this tendency to think that the housing situation is how it was in the 80s when they paid cash for their house, right? Or like all these things where they just went, oh yeah, no, we just worked a bit harder and sacrificed. You fuck off, it just rolls me up every time. It's like, well, no offense, but while you were paying cash for that house, I was struggling to get a computer. So I'm sorry, but so I could study and struggling to eat. So I'm sorry, I'm not very sympathetic to that story. Thank you very much. Not very good at reading the room, that woman. As cool as she is, she's not good at reading the room. So anyway, but, bless her. But we sort of got into politics, and she sort of said she said something about hospitals or something about, and I just went, you know what, that's not true. It doesn't work that way. It's not true. And all I ever do on Twitter or Facebook is, it's amazing. And again, we've gone through the science on this. We know why. Okay, it's a threat to your identity. Okay, it's like being told something's not true or being wrong. It's embarrassing. But at the same time, I'm coming to the conclusion that all of this effort and cost and time and, even though, if I had more money and resources to pour into it, I'd be more prepared and be able to edit and prepare for content and all that stuff. This stuff is consuming. Okay, it consumes resources and time. Okay, that's just how people won't pay for content, and they want it done perfectly for free before they'll give you $2. It's like, fuck off, whatever. I'm not doing that. If you want me to edit or do anything constructive, then you can pay me to do it. I think I've shown you what's possible with no budget, that you would actually, invest in me and know that I would actually put that to good use if I had the money. Anyway, so, but, it's just this, I was feeling despondent that day because, we'd just been told our lease wasn't being renewed. We were going to try and buy a house. It wasn't working out. Ended up being fucking almost scammed, okay, out of, by a seedy broker. This predatory guy, because we were on a time limit and we were sort of, ignoring some of our dodgy, anyway, side point. But I said, that's not how it works. Okay. And but then she was sitting there and I was like, okay, well, I've got a degree in this, Grandma. That's not how it works. And she was like, oh no, but I said, no, this is how it works. This is like this, and this. It actually, there's a reason why that's, that's a state government thing. That's a federal government thing. This is not what why are you voting? Because she's like basically saying the hospital is shit, therefore vote Liberal Party. And I said, but do you not understand that this is a 30-year policy decision that was made by that specific party to defund Medicare and all that stuff? And she's like, no, but I was like, do you not, people don't connect who they vote for with what annoys them or upsets them or the actual issues. And it's like, well, how can you not see that this is Howard's policy? She's like, no, I go to the private hospital. And that's right. And she was complaining about the private hospital not being up to standard. I said, well, yeah, they're going to do that. That's what happened. He siphoned off all the money that would have been going into excellent public hospitals, okay, into private health. They are now owned by like Bupa and those private health, those global health insurance, Americanized health system, and it's a race to the bottom now. That's why you get the fucking shit biscuits, Grandma, because of them, not because Mark McGowan is in power in Western Australia and like the hospital system. It's like, no. They don't understand this stuff. But the problem that frustrates me the most is that it's like, well, why I take the time, okay? I take the time, even if it's not perfect, and I'm not, because a lot of this stuff is quite dense. Anyone who pretends who just talks on the spot about these things is probably not preparing, okay? I think this is a frustration with people who are obviously not deep diving or doing anything substantial into some of this culture war stuff. They stop at this surface level without going deeper, because to go deeper means they can't produce a video every single fucking day and they can't just say whatever the fuck comes to mind and like pander to people who are like just throwing money at people who agree with them all of the time and don't push them in any way. And again, we know why, because we went through that, didn't we? But at the same time, it's frustrating because every time I turn on something and I go, you know what, the evidence shows in psych research with misinformation or sharing something is that someone actually going, okay, actually that's not true, is one of the greatest ways to fight that. But they ignore the fact that you are now fucking public enemy number one and everyone will fucking pitch a fit. It's like, okay, that's not true. And then they go, why? And then they demand an essay, which would take me 2 days to write. and they won't pay me for it. And you go, well, no, fuck it. I will take the time. I can take the time, but you need to meet me halfway and commission. And, I'm not doing your work for you. Oh, there's no information. Oh, woe is me. Yeah, there's information. You just got to look and seek and move beyond the fucking surface of everything and beyond a tweet and beyond. Some things are just work and you got to work for it. And I'm not your fucking, workhorse. But that said, I got fed up with like this stuff about, because they use it as a get out. It's like, well, no, that's actually not true. This is something I know a lot about. I did an essay on it in my master's for coursework on this particular issue around emergency departments and what the root cause is, and health policy. That's something that I know quite a lot about. And this is a systematic like shifting of public money, and I've done the same thing with schools, shifting public money into private for-profit institutions, and then those things, and then they blame the public hospital, and then people go private, and then people's expectations of private are too high in a for-profit system, and it all goes to shit. And so she sits there moaning. It's like, okay, moan. And then I go, well, no, actually, you should probably change your vote. I was like, if you want better biscuits in hospital, change your vote. And she's like, oh, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And I went, well, what did I go to uni? And then this was funny actually, because I was basically going, well, I don't know whether I want to train as a clin psych. I'm obviously staying in psych now, but at the time I was like, what's the point of all of this? Right. And so I got my sort of oppositional thing happening when she started on me like that. And I just was like, oh, she's like, oh, so what are you doing with work? So this sort of status stuff is important to her. It's not, what are you doing for work? I don't want to work. I'll quit. I was just trolling. And then she was like, oh, what about studies? You still doing that? I said, no, I'm going to quit. There's no point. And then she goes, why? And I said, well, I've got a degree over here and you just said everyone's entitled to their opinion. So what's the point? And she's like, but I feel that way because every interaction I go on with Facebook with this election, sorry, I've got fucking shit all over me now, with this election, right, is people, I'm spending my time, I take the time, I sit there and I go, you know what, that's actually incorrect. That's not how this works. You've got the wrong end of the stick here, and here's how it works. And then they get defensive and angry, and again, I understand, but at the same time, it's like, why bother? Why am I just turn this stuff off. It's like, okay, well, the evidence says if you intervene that, it's not just for them, but for the people that are seeing that that's actually false, and that helps to stop the spread of like misinformation, right? But like, again, it's like, well, okay, well, at the expense of what? Friendships. But people are just being fucking stupid and it's like, there's no point. You can't reach people. And that was part of my problem, is that I reckon with enough time and enough patience and skill, I could actually reach people. But I also just went, no, there's no point. No point. I've spent $60,000. I've got a $60,000 HECS debt. Part of it is like supplement loan that I took out. It's another fucking bullshit thing, which is a loan you take out to try and live while you're studying. And I spent all this time studying and all this time working hard and doing everything everyone said and getting the cheaper house and saving all of the things, only to see people ranting, who are quite privileged, ranting and raving about how they, when they know nothing about politics, they know nothing about the election, ranting and raving about shit that's just not true. Like, there's no one to vote for. There's plenty to vote for. Oh, my vote doesn't count. Yes, it does. Our system is designed to count every vote, unlike America, okay? Our system is designed that way so that every vote gets counted. And even if it's called on election night, there's a whole process after election night where they still make sure that the election was sound and that everything was counted and everything was followed correctly. There's a whole mechanism there. There's a whole process in place. And just because you don't know what it is doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's the thing, is this fucking ranting and raving about shit that it does exist, that you can look up, that you can learn, that you can find out. Like, some of us spend 5 years going, okay, what's the problem with this? Like, what's going on with the culture wars thing? Okay, what is this thing? all right, recalibrate. This seems like it's important. Nah, people just take it on face value and set up a fucking business and a Patreon account where they just go, trans women are men. Okay, cool. What else have you got? What else have you got? Then you got people writing trans women in sports. Okay, well, how else are you going to represent the 150,000 people in that electorate? Cool. What else have you got? Policy-wise, are you thinking about the kind of world that you want? Or are you thinking about you and what you want? And anybody who thinks that here we go, here's some voting advice. Don't vote for what you want. And don't vote for people who are only interested and running on what they want. Because the people who are running for those seats represent 150,000 plus people. More in the Senate. And they need to be running, and you vote for people who are there to serve those 150,000 people. Not people who are interested in feathering their own nest in the most abhorrent, revolting, corrupt government that I've seen in my lifetime. Oh, but it's about the women in sports. It's just such an important issue right now. But, but again, this is something where I've been writing on it. But again, writing something that I should have published 3 fucking weeks ago, but I haven't because I haven't got time. Because now I'm working my ass off doing what I did 20 years ago for money with no rise in rates because everyone haggles fucking me while gardeners are getting $65 an hour. Plumbers and people who fucking, I'm nothing against gardeners. It's honest work, but fucking hell. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm sitting there and it's like, I can't write these essays. And then you go online and then there's these dudes that pick you apart and say, well, where's your fucking essay? No, pay for my time. I will put the effort in. I firmly believe that with enough patience and time and understanding and forgiveness and charity and all of those things that I talk about, that you can change hearts and minds and move fucking hearts and minds. But you got to fucking pay for people's time and respect people's time. And what do you want people to do? You're obviously, if you are in a position where you feel like you can demand free shit from people right now in terms of their time and their resources, then you are pretty fucking comfortable and doing okay. And part of the reason why a lot of these content creators, a lot of them, do you know what they do? They don't pay the people that help them. I refuse to do that. My ethics may become unstuck. Or they offshore it to Fiverr in the Philippines where it's fucking shit and of shit quality. I would rather do it myself and, but I can only do so much. Like, that's just how it is. I can only sit here and badly explain basically how the preferential system works, even though I'd love to be sitting there every day reporting on the election or sitting on the fucking hashtag #OzPoll giving my hot fucking analysis on the issues of the day from my comfy fucking desk under a pseudonym because I'm actually really a fucking coward and I don't put my name out there or do anything even remotely risky. But, yeah, I'm the problem for trying to say that's actually not true. And then the demand is put on my labour and time to defend that. It's like, no, do you know what I do? I did 10 years of study. So as a shortcut, here's my pass where I pull rank and go, that's not true. I don't need to, there's certain things that I don't need to defend. I'm sorry, but, I know more than you. That's what you do. And that was the lie. I don't know whether it was the lie. It's just how I feel right now, which was that this whole social contract for Gen X has been fucking destroyed. And it's not just housing. The fact that I'm 43 years old and I still won't have my first house till I'm way over 45, if I'm lucky. And that's being fucking lucky. Okay. The fact that my degree means fucking nothing to anybody, but what will happen is if I'm not working towards another degree, people will see that there's something wrong with me because I'm stuck in a fucking web design job because apparently I make logos and websites all the time. I mean, I do for money, but it's for money. It's like, you know, and again, I'm fortunate but even then, now, because I'm a woman in tech and I'm over 40, the men progress in the industry and are in demand, and the women are fucking sidelined and treated like low-level Wix fucking assembly people, not strategists with 25 years in the industry, okay? So I'm still sitting there haggling over fucking forms. Okay, so anyway, it's just another rant. But, you know, this does feed the election, which is the fact that there is no point doing election coverage. There is no point doing any of this. I do it because it's fun, because I need the skill, and I like the few people that watch me, right? But at the same time, like, what's the fucking point? There is no point. Because I should have listened on that first day that you're in for a world of fucking pain. Because people, you know, like most people don't want to hear anything that's remotely complicated, challenging. They don't want to hear from an expert on anything. They would rather hear from some dimwit with a 2-second take on things, hence Tim Pool trending. You know, like, what the fuck? If I had his resources, like, he's that stupid with a team. He could have a full-time person doing research and making sure that he was fact-checked and making sure that his opinions were right, and he could make it look like he was a lot smarter, and he still looks completely fucking stupid. But, you know, again, keep going with the culture wars. Keep saying the same shit you were saying 5 years ago. Keep escalating everything until people are radicalized and, you know, they vote for actual fascists. And you're promoting it because you're just stoking that rage and stoking that rage and stoking that rage and stoking that rage for yourself, with no understanding that there is a society around you and there are processes, and you might not know they exist, but they exist, like the courts, the legal process, precedent, common law, the process of passing bills, the layers of government. It's a beautiful thing. And the fact that you are shitting on that stuff day in, day out is just egregious. And that's why I sit there and I go, well, what's the point of doing election coverage? No one's going to listen. Because they're all fucking talking about how the system is fucked. The system isn't fucked. You're an idiot. There are problems with ideology and people being dumb enough to vote for people who fucking make it so that you know, bait and switch policy so that they think that the problem with a private hospital is the problem of the people who fucking perpetrated it in the first place. I don't know if that came out the right way. You know what I meant? Blaming, I mean, seriously, they're pulling out the fucking Labor's bad at the economy card. How is that not seen as like complete and utter bullshit at this point? Are people that naive and stupid that they can just use? It's like, are you stuck in the fucking 90s? Get out of the 90s, you fucking boomer. It happened one time. And it was complicated because we floated our currency and there was a worldwide recession, fucking all that other shit that went on, and you blame Paul Keating. But it wasn't, fuck me. I don't know how that shit's effective. I mean, well, see, rhetorically, if I was on Twitter, I would say, I don't understand how this thing fucking happens. That's called that's a rhetorical device, as in disbelief, expressing disbelief at something that's shit. Not, hey, fellas, I don't know this thing. Could you please explain it to me? Please explain. I'm ranting. I don't know why I just went on a sideward rant. Oh, yeah, I was going to look at the AEC. Hang on, let's go. I'll do it quickly because it was actually there was a few funny ones. And I feel for them, man. I really fucking feel. Because they're actually, one thing is the AEC is the Australian Electoral Commission, right? And I got to say that I feel for them this election, hey, because like I've seen them on Twitter and they even like, so I was just being funny about something, and then because I don't know who I am, I was just joking and I said something ironic, But AEC showed up in the replies, and it was basically they went, this is not true. Blah, blah, blah. They have to like basically just line by line over and over again keep correcting people, even when they're joking, in case people go take them literally. And I was just like, with the level of stupid that exists, I sympathise with that social media team. It's like, oh my God. Where's the stop and consider? So they've had to do a whole campaign. So they've done this whole thing, right? Here's the disinformation register. Actually, should I share it? I might share it. Let me see. Let's have a chuckle. Hang on. You just get it in here. I laughed. Because some of it's really dumb, man. So the register below, let's switch to, hang on. There we go. So the Australian Electoral Commission disinformation register, right? So the register, so you need to also understand that disinformation is sort of falls in the gaps politically. So we've got this sort of legal problem where it's like the AEC can't enforce truth because they're independent. They oversee the process of the election, okay? And then you've got ACMA, which is the media sort of advertising side of it. Then you've got the ACCC, which is the Consumer, Anti-Corruption and all that sort of stuff commission. And then you've got ASIC around the registration of companies and securities and all that sort of stuff. There's all these sort of fault lines. Then you've got federal and state government and, all of that sort of complicating stuff. So they can't actually sort of police like disinformation, which is, again, why we're looking at these new rules, right? New laws. There's gaps, right? Much like the Spam Act or anything like that. You're not going to be arrested for a mistake, okay? You're going to be arrested for deliberate, like with the Spam Act, okay? You're not going to get arrested if your server's compromised and you send a bunch of spam to people. There's no intent, okay? It's the same thing with this disinformation stuff. So disinformation. The AEC enables voter fraud by not allowing conversation about electoral processes. The AEC has sent multiple copies of unsolicited postal votes to a single voter, proving voter fraud occurs. The AEC only ever actions communication about the electoral process if it's factually incorrect. Here we go. So there's this thing. So they've got a disinformation register. It's really interesting, actually, because this is like they're actually tracking some of the stuff that you can't see. Like this is the stuff that they make it their mission. Here we go. So the writs for the 2022 election were not issued with the Great Seal of the Commonwealth, and the election is therefore illegitimate. The writs for the House of Reps were signed and issued by the Governor General. It's like, I can't believe people. This is the shit they have to deal with, man. Postal vote applications are being submitted and processed for deceased Australians. So you see that thread where the disinformation template, okay, that exists in the US. They've tried to put it here, but it doesn't work the same way. So it's pretty funny to see how the culture wars stuff sort of trickles down into like a system that like doesn't even support the bullshit. Like it's just obviously just the template from America that applies. Like when you had those people that were out in the street fighting for their freedom and freedom of speech, it's like, but you don't have that. You've got freedom of political expression, which is why you're not going to be arrested for protesting, but you're going to be arrested for misdemeanors or other things because that's it's just doesn't work the same way, dickhead. So postal vote application, there we go. The AEC is illegally requiring bulk nominations be submitted 8 days. Okay, so they're just all this stuff. Statutory declarations about your ballot paper can be submitted to polling officials. Swaths of First Nations people have been wiped from the electoral roll without their knowledge. Not true. There will be 2 federal elections in 2022, including the People's Non-Corporate Commonwealth election. They have to address this stuff. As has been the case since Federation, there will only be 1 federal election in 2022. But this is just the A's. These are the people who are having opinions on Facebook, by the way. Most of this shit is shit that people are taking in. So this is why, no, you can't have your opinion. You're not allowed your opinion. You're allowed your opinion. You're allowed a vote. But you're not right just by having the opinion. Having the opinion is not the thing that makes you correct. And if someone says that opinion is false, then they're not the bad guy. They're not threatening your right to an opinion or a statement. They are correcting something that is false because it has an impact on other people, and this is wasting your tax dollars, fuckhead. So concerned with taxes, this is where it goes. Because the AEC have to sit and address this fucking bullshit that you keep spreading. So if people like me go in and say that's not true, you owe us a fucking debt. So the AEC knows the election date in advance and is why there is enrolment communication and procurement activities. Bullshit. It's not how it works. The election is set within a range of period of time. The AEC doesn't get advance notice of election timing. Easy. Okay. But then it's like you don't have the right to an opinion. You have a responsibility to not be a fuckhead. Because you know what? This costs all of us money. Having to address these nonsense bullshit questions because you didn't bother paying attention in year 9. And it's on people like me to explain the basics of how our system works. And it's like, I'm going to hide it because I know you won't watch it. So, because it's got actually something you might learn in it. And then I'll rant for a minute about how you're a fucking asshole for treating me like shit, for merely saying, I'm doing a service, a public service, every single time I say that's false. I am saving the taxpayer money every time I say that's false because it means that it's shared less, which means that bureaucrats don't have to fucking deal with this bullshit. So, Dominion voting machines. See that, like, transplanting from the US. Like, what the fuck? Dominion voting machines will be used and will be rigged to favour one of the major political parties. We don't use that shit, okay? We use paper votes. We always will. And Australian voters who are not fully vaccinated will not be able to vote. All enrolled Australians will be able to access voting. And there's one friend who's been on that sort of like anti-fucking lockdown, anti-COVID. Like, oh, they're denying my rights to vote. No, they're not. They're not. It's not true. People will only be eligible to be party-appointed scrutineers if they're fully vaccinated. The AC does not require scrutineers to be vaccinated. Pencil marks are erased in the counting process. Like, it's just conspiracy. This is what they have to deal with. This is the reality of, like, you know, when it was like, oh, I want my right to free speech. Well, what do you want your right to free speech? Oh, this is my right to my opinion. I have the right to an opinion. And my opinion, because it's just a deeply held level of bullshit that I just share with everybody else, like a hot fucking fart. You share your feelings everywhere. You share your fucking thoughts everywhere. You share your opinions, your ill-informed bullshit everywhere. And that has an impact on everybody. This is the stuff that professionals like me with $60,000 degrees have to spend their fucking time doing because you can't keep your fucking mouth shut and can't listen to somebody who actually outranks you on a topic. This is the impact. Anyway, and then you fucking act like I'm the cunt, queen of the cunts. Because I say, hey, that's not true. You might want to look into that further. Actually, that's the federal government, not the state government. Actually, that's the state government, not the federal government. Actually, no, it's like you don't have... But no, you don't value that. Because I'm saving tax dollars. Who values that shit? Nobody. Here we go. A vote of no confidence has the potential to cause the entire election to be rerun. Not true. Parties direct preferences. As I went through, you direct your preferences. Don't be dumb. There are constitutional options available for the government to delay the election beyond 2022. Not true. See, the thing is, I know that's not true. I don't have to fucking click further. And I also shouldn't have to explain what's under that tab to you without money. That's my point. I don't know what my point is. I just ran. Putting a candidate you don't think will win as number one on the House of Representative ballot paper is wasting your vote. Not true. Liberal National Party how to vote cards were included in material given to new Australian citizens. AEC enrolment and voting information was included in material given to new Australian citizens. There we go. This software. There we go. Anyway, postal voting is not secure and people should deregister. Blank ballots and donkey votes are counted for the incumbent government. Not true. Yeah, they're not aligned. And that's the reason why I went for a job with the AEC actually, and I actually couldn't work for them because I was they don't hire people that are aligned with the political party on purpose. Obviously people have views, but they hold these things in. I just thought it was quite funny anyway. But this is the shit that they have to deal with. Because there's no information on how to vote. Yeah, there is. Because you're lazy and you can't be asked and you've got lots of rights to your opinion. Well, I've got the right to tell you that your opinion is fucking false and that you're an idiot. So fucking worried about your freedoms? Well, what about my freedoms? To not have to pay more taxes to cover this shit because you're being a fucking moron. There's plenty of people to vote for. This is how it works. Your vote gets counted, dickhead. Okay? You're voting for the federal government, not the state government's policy. The federal government is atrocious. If you want to vote out the state government, do that at the fucking state election next time. Fucking idiots. Oh, but how about we just don't vote? Let's just do that. Oh, no, I'm going to have to defend this in court. No, you won't. You're not going to have to do that. You're not going to get a fine. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I think I cut out anyway. Did I? No. I knocked my cable. Okay, sorry. Screen went black. I'm going to go anyway. Been too long. Sorry for ranting, but it's just, it gets me. This is why I just don't engage in this process. Because every time I log on to anything at the moment and try to engage, I want to correct information and do the right thing. I wanted to educate people. I wanted to do stuff, and not a single fucking person gave me really any support. So, there's no point. So what I'm going to do is just sit around and talk about what I want to talk about, and just assume that people aren't interested in learning anything. And it's just the AEC's job to debunk your bullshit. And even then, even if I give you a link, you'll just call me a cunt and block me, because that's where we're at now. This is where we are now. There's no point. You're all gone. You're all so far fucking gone that there is no point. But election night will be great, because I have a feeling that there's going to be some nice little surprises in it. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And what will happen is that there'll be a whole bunch of post-election analysis, and there'll be a whole bunch of fucking opinions, and there'll be a whole bunch of shit that I warned about 3 years ago that no one fucking listened to me on. And then they'll turn around and they'll write these things in Crikey and all those places, and they'll pretend that it was their fucking idea the whole time, and they thought of it, and I'm left out, because that's what happens. Because I'm a woman in tech, and that's what's happened to me. I just make websites. That's all I do. And I earn roughly the same amount as a fucking gardener. No offense to gardeners. Gardening is honourable work. I couldn't do it. I'm not that fit. But, I feel a little lied to. Good money in real estate and bullshit right now. Let's put it that way. Anyway, I'm going to go 6-week courses. Should have just been a fucking phlebotomist. 6 weeks. Real estate. 6-week course. Not fucking 10 years. No point. And also, even if I've got 10 years behind me, that's not enough. I've got to be working on another degree before I'm fucking considered credible as well. Oh, no. Anyway, elections break me. They make me grumpy, and I'm glad when they're over. I'm not paying much attention to the whole thing because it plays out exactly as I expected it to. They're doing well. The ALP is actually doing well, but I don't know whether they're really going to fully overcome. I don't know. They might. I think there's going to be some surprises. There's going to be some surprises. That's all I'm going to say is I think that things may play out. I'm not giving myself wriggle room here. I'm just saying I think there's going to be some surprises. That's all I can say, really, because I know what the science says. I know what the research says. I know what is happening. I know what the strategy is. I know roughly where the preferences are likely to flow. I don't know, and you never know this, okay? Especially polls, you never know the mood or the real vote until after on the day, and whether people will be able to withstand voting for the Liberal government again, because they care so much about certain issues. I have a feeling they might, and that especially women can sway the votes here, and that concerns me greatly. Because the ALP they've got that position in their platform. I've talked about this before. They're probably just throwing them a bone to shut them the fuck up. Okay. It's their national policy platform. It's but may as well be written on a napkin until they're in government. And in government, they've got to follow a certain process. And even if they don't follow a certain process, there's an avenue of appeal through the courts. There's all of these processes that it's going to take, like I've said, it's going to take a decade. People are going to be test cases, but they won't do it. They'll just sit and moan on Twitter going, "What's a woman? What's a woman? What's a woman?" But they won't put themselves actually in the court. They won't be the test case. They won't challenge things. They'll hide behind pseudonyms in their comfortable little, media job or whatever, pretending that people like not supporting people like me or doing anything. They're just sitting there behind anonymous accounts, demanding that people who are out there trying to work with this system and trying to make this world a better place and trying to act as though they represent more than just one fucking opinion on things, and they actually are representative of a broader community and a bigger picture problem. And you're just trying to trip them up, and you're just sabotaging them behind an anonymity. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. And what you're doing is also just, again, I can't read that sentiment. I don't know. That's something that you can't measure that, really, because people don't really admit this stuff because they're afraid to even say it on the internet with their real name. I imagine that there's a whole bunch of people that will, we've got a secret ballot here, so, we don't know. We don't know. So anyway, this is why I don't bother. I'm trying to get a guest or two. If you want me to do, I'm going to do an election night stream because I love that shit. But yeah, I'm trying to cobble some people together. It's Saturday nights are hard because people are often pre-booked and stuff. So, especially comedians are usually working now because everyone's out and a couple of comedians I was trying to get on there, but they Anyway, thanks for watching. I love you. I'm sorry for ranting. This is why it just winds me up. It just winds me up. So people, there's no resources. Yeah, there's literally all of the resources available. More than ever. More than when I had to read through all the fucking shit. I couldn't just YouTube stuff. I had to do the hard stuff. Like fucking hell. The information's there. Don't be dumb. Just stop listening to dummies. Actually put some effort in and learn some complexity. And learn to love the complexity and learn to love the magic that is like these systems that have just so many beautiful checks and balances to the point where it actually mostly doesn't matter what government is in power. It does to an extent, but people need to know that you have so much power. You have in Australia, you have all of the power on Saturday, all of the power in the world that you could possibly have. And so to turn around and say, it's like, fuck off, you're dumb. Learn it. I'm going to go. You have power. Use your vote wisely. Vote if you don't know who to vote for. Vote as if you can't. Vote as if you've just arrived here and you need support. Vote as if, vote for someone other than yourself. to have a better life. Not for some culture wars and nonsense that only affects, like, it's proving to be an edge case and a case by case thing, and that the law is ultimately, it's going to take time. Cut off your nose to spite your face, you dumb fuckers. Oh, God. Anyway, I love you. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'm not trying to guilt anyone into money. I'm just telling you how I feel about this whole thing. That it is very, very hard to justify the investment. And if I wasn't self-motivated, there's no real extrinsic motivation for doing this. I am, intrinsically motivated to do this and do it as a skill and sort of get stuff off my chest and, all that sort of stuff. So I'm always grateful for patrons. I'm always grateful for viewers, but also, like that American thing where the customer is always right. And just because, you view someone or someone comments that you owe them anything, that's not true. Okay. Here our customer service is terrible. Fuck off. We're overpriced and rude. That's how we do things here. I'm kidding, but you get what I'm saying. I don't owe anybody anything. I appreciate any support, but it's going to be just because you believe in paying for content. I'm not transactional. So the transactional stuff will be courses and it will be charged at the appropriate rates. So I'm going to go. I love you. Thank you for your precious life seconds. Time to go. Bye. Hang on. Where are we? Let's do Travolta. Bye.